For nearly 100,000 years, human survival meant constant motion. During the last ice age, our ancestors lived as nomadic hunters and gatherers. To them, the Earth was a neutral surface to walk across in pursuit of wild game, not a living entity to build a relationship with. That massive timeline ended around 7,000 BCE. As global temperatures warmed and the ice retreated, scattered communities began experimenting with a different way of life. At places like Mehrgarh, a settlement near the mountains in modern-day Pakistan, nomadic tribes stopped walking. They began domesticating local wild barley and herding goats, staking their entire existence on a single fixed location. This system of agriculture locked these early villagers into a terrifying reality. They were now completely dependent on the performance of one specific patch of dirt. A sudden drought, an unexpected flood, or disease meant total starvation. The old safety net of migrating to greener pastures was gone. To survive, these early humans had to adjust their relationship with their environment. The soil could no longer be treated as an inert surface. It became a living power that had to be negotiated with every season. When your life depends on the fertility of the soil, the earth begins to look like a womb. The planting of seeds and the harvesting of food became an intimate, anxious cycle of birth and renewal. We can see how they visualized this power in the archaeological record. Across thousands of miles of early settlements, from Syria to Western India, we find these seated clay figurines. Often carved in a foot-profile position with prominently displayed breasts, these objects represent humanity's intense focus on female procreative energy. Parallel to this, we see the emergence of a male counterpart, the bull. As the largest domestic animal in the village, the bull stood out for its raw, untamed physical strength and its obvious role in reproduction. While female domestic animals were rarely modeled in clay, bulls were constantly modeled as symbols of dangerous, chaotic male power. Early villagers utilized these clay figures as survival technologies, a physical method to influence nature by giving it a face. By personifying the chaotic forces of fertility, these communities were trying to build a tangible relationship with the powers that controlled their food supply. Over the next few millennia, these small farming communities grew wealthy and complex. By the 3rd millennium BCE, the isolated villages of the Middle East and Asia had expanded into an interconnected network of urban trading hubs, spanning across Sumeria, ancient Iran, and the emerging Indus Valley. As society scaled up, the female earth power evolved into a fierce, independent urban deity. The feminine divine was adapting to the brutal politics and organized warfare of city life. Inanna embodies aggressive power, identified by the tamed lion on her leash. On this Akkadian seal, she represents the fusion of love and war characterizing Sumerian goddesses. Her authority is marked by horns sprouting from her head and maces jutting from her shoulders. This visual footprint traveled across the ancient trade routes. Thousands of years later, these same motifs, the independent female warrior, heavy weapons, and companion lion, would depict the Indian goddess Durga. The rise of the city pushed human spirituality toward a more complex protector role. The feminine divine shifted from a nurturer of the soil into a militant guardian of civilization. Alongside these powerful new deities, around 3000 BCE, another major architectural shift hit these urban centers: the construction of towering, monumental brick platforms. Cities began dedicating immense labor to physically elevate their ritual spaces high above the surrounding streets. This physical elevation arrived just as male human figurines began appearing frequently in the archaeological record. The village focus on feminine power was being integrated into a complex hierarchy, where elite rulers and priests began centralizing control. Artifacts show that rituals on these platforms were intense. This Luristan bronze pinhead shows a central figure wearing the horns of divine authority while grasping large serpents, motifs linked to nude, horned priests in Elamite carvings. Architects engineered stone conduits into these platforms, specifically to manage the volume of blood produced by the sacrificial tables above. These drains show that high-altitude ritual centers were sites of organized, large-scale animal sacrifice. The individual prayers of early villagers were replaced by the rituals of elite institutions. The towering platforms and organized bloodshed proved that supreme power no longer lived in the village dirt. It had been moved into the city center. Up until the mid-3rd millennium BCE, this massive interaction sphere stretching from the Mediterranean coast to western India operated on a largely shared set of beliefs. Ideas, artwork, and agricultural techniques flowed freely along the trade routes. In India, the ancient reverence for the female earth evolved into Shakti, the core Hindu concept of divine feminine energy. While other regions shifted focus, India uniquely preserved and refined this ancient spiritual DNA. But around 2700 BCE, the ancient network shattered. The Elamite culture in Iran turned its military focus toward Mesopotamia, permanently severing its cultural ties with India. Cut off from the larger West Asian exchange, the populations of the Indian subcontinent turned their focus entirely inward. India was now physically isolated, but it was armed with thousands of years of agricultural mastery and a rich language of animal symbolism. They possessed everything they needed to build something staggering on their own. Along the banks of the Indus River, they constructed a sprawling urban empire that defies everything we expect from ancient cities. Unlike the empires of Sumer and Elam, which left behind thousands of clay tablets detailing their conquests, this new Indian civilization took a different path. It was highly organized, incredibly expansive, and right now it is entirely silent. Their writing system remains undeciphered. In our next episode, we enter these ruins to investigate how an empire of this scale functioned without leaving a single readable word behind. Let's look at what they left in the dirt.